joining together in this holy contract of matrimony is meant to do the work of God. It's meant to promote the good of God in the church, to extend the sanctification of souls. Do we have to be paid to do that? Maybe. It's certainly true that in the modern world it would help our families, Catholic families and otherwise, if the state would take an interest in families. If the church would take an interest in families. But always seems to be the contrary nowadays. We are made to think that marriage is something else, matrimony is something else. We're even led into false ideas about what a family is. I tell you here and now, the man and a woman and children make up a family. One man, one woman, and the children. That makes a family. In case you didn't know that already. But it's very possible that many of our youth don't know that because they're told otherwise for many, many years. A lot of indoctrination over time makes us start to think like the indoctrination. So as I said in my catechism class today, I'm all about propaganda. Myself. I will keep telling you the same things according to the Catholic Church's teaching and catechism until it's so solid in you, you can't deny it. But you know, we still can deny it, can't we? Because we can have the ideal, and yet the will maybe not follow along and may choose otherwise. But at least as far as the church is concerned, as far as you are concerned as husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, you need to know it. What is the truth about marriage, about this family life, and you need to teach it to your children. If they reject it, that's a different thing. But what I see today is a lack of understanding of what the family truly is. And partly that comes from not knowing what a man is, or what a woman is, or the responsibility of children. Imagine how surprised I was as a young boy when I heard that children in the late 70s and 80s could divorce their parents. That's not something that I would want to do, even as a young boy, but imagine how shocking that was to me, to hear that you could just divorce your parents and do what? We're so dependent on our parents. Look at the child Jesus, gives us such a good example. Even at 12 years old, he's so dependent. He has put himself as dependent as possible on his parents. And yet here we hear in the modern world, we hear this, oh, you can divorce your parents. Incredible. Well, of course, you know the other type of divorce had already started. Husbands divorcing their wives and wives their husbands. It's just a consequence, I guess, for eventually who owes who anything. No type of respect, no type of deference or piety. They could just throw out their parents when they wish. So really you see already coming through the last few decades, a couple generations now, this misunderstanding of what is a man, what is a woman, what are children, and what is a family. We need the Holy Family today like never before, as an example. Because if I have some ideas in my mind, here they are. There are 5 ideas, and I want to know whether they correspond to proper thinking. I need to know that the Holy Family lines up with that. The principles of St. Joseph, the principles of Our Lady, the principles of the child Jesus, they must line up. If they don't, what am I going to throw out? The Holy Family? No, throw out your own ideas that are erroneous. They don't match. The Holy Family is such a perfect example for us to know how to think, how to act as men, women, and children. Think back, dear men. How many of us really had a true formation as men with masculinity and a nobility? Very few. If you have been, hold on to it. If you've been raised as a good, solid gentleman, hold on to it. It's fast disappearing. From a lot of our modern youth, they don't know what it means to be a gentleman. They don't know what it means to be masculine. They don't know what it means to be a man. And they're somewhere floating in between. Or maybe they're nothing. Because they don't know what to be. Hold on to that masculinity. Hold on to that ideal. What is a man? According to the nature. And that's the problem, isn't it? We have here in the Holy Family the perfect example of what humanity should be like. Nature being lived out, fulfilled as God wanted it. And then what is most important, ultimately, is this faith that what God had made in creating these individuals and get our Lord taking his humanity is raised to a whole new level by the supernatural faith, by the supernatural grace. He who is full of grace, our Lord Jesus Christ, Our Lady who is full of grace, and then St. Joseph, who we don't call him full of grace, but we know he was full of grace, according to his capacity. See what can happen in individuals who live according to their nature, according to how God made them? Impressive. So that's a big problem, not knowing who we are, thinking that we are somebody else, or having disregard. A type of ignorance is one of the worst things, being ignorant of who we are as men, as women, as children of our parents, and everything starts to fall apart. But it's a very important point, that if we can figure that out, if we can live according to it, then it makes our path a lot easier. But the modern world, and we know who's at the head of it, the devil himself, wishes to ruin any place for grace to land, anything where grace can sanctify or bring up, elevate. He wishes to ruin it. And he's been at work for a long time. Think of all of those problems that men have. I think of this young man who recently got married. Well, he's been married a few years, and he's having real problems in his marriage. Real trials and difficulties. And why is that, I ask myself? What has happened to him? I know him. Known him for years, even when he was a small boy. I didn't think he would have such a trouble or difficulty in getting married. But it's almost as though once getting married, he realized the constraints, the need for sacrifice, the need for generosity and selflessness, and as though he wasn't able to stand up to the challenge. When I think back to how some of our boys are educated in the Society of St. Pius X circles, that is to say in our schools, I think of La Salette Boys Academy, and yes, no school is perfect, but I think about how these boys are challenged as young men so that they can stand up to these challenges later, either to follow a vocation through or to get married. It's not an easy thing. Can you imagine a young man never having a challenge? Never even facing challenges in life, and therefore he then suddenly, at a certain point in his life, maybe 20 years old, whenever it is he gets married, or maybe faces the vocation of the priesthood, and suddenly he's burdened with these challenges, and he can't stand up to it. He's never been challenged. He's never had anything to have him step outside of himself and be selfless. He's always been catered to, or given what he wants. Never had anybody place an obstacle to him. So he collapses when his wife says, boo. Says, I'm going to run away. His children challenge him. I don't know. Maybe he sees his freedoms being lessened and lessened. I can't handle this. He sees his machoism disappearing. I don't know. So many different things challenge a young man as he faces life. And if he never had any of those challenges, he doesn't even know himself. How can he then run a household? How can he then be like a St. Joseph? How can he lead a Mary? He can't. And then the wife. In the beautiful Lauds hymn of today, we say that Our Lady undertook her duties of the home with a joyful heart. There's very few women who do that today. Taking the duties of the home life with a joyful heart. They too want to run away from those things. The things of the home, which are very encompassing. Taking care of a husband, taking care of children, taking care of the well-being of the home. She is the heart of the home. She wants to run away from them. Over and over again. I know of a case, a young man sitting in front of me crying, saying, "Father, my wife ran away. She ran home to her mother. What do I do now?" Well, they separated, probably divorced, and then went their own separate ways and found new relationships. That's very pleasing to God. No, it's not. Just by that. 2 souls ruined. Why? Did the couple not understand what they were getting into? Entering into this contract, which makes them workers with Christ, workers for God. Now it's a lifelong commitment. What happened? She ran home to mom when the tough times came along. We're so quick to run away from the cross. We take the cross upon ourselves. Well, let's say we take the joys upon ourselves and we don't accept the cross that comes with it. That's what happens. Incredible. Now, there are a lot of bad marriages out there. Things that go very wrong, yes. They do happen. And that's why it takes such discernment in picking the right spouse. Such discernment and even entering into a good relationship. I remind you of what happened with Joseph and Mary. She dedicated her life. Her parents brought her early to the temple. She dedicated her life to the temple for the amount of years that were requested or required of a young woman. She did that. Close to the age of 12, 13, whatever it might have been. And then when she was to leave, she had made this vow of virginity. She had dedicated herself to God, and she was not going to break that. We already know she's the Immaculate Conception. So what was she to do? Now, Jewish custom expects that she would get married. It was the bane of the day to be an unmarried woman without having a husband. Or even